Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for April 29th, 2022, occurring around 2:13 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot to talk about this afternoon, including the recent warming in the tropical Atlantic and how that might factor into the upcoming hurricane season, which is just about a month away at this point, and a look at the severe weather potential across the Great Plains later this afternoon and evening. Taking a wild look across the tropical Atlantic this afternoon, we notice that we have pretty much cloud-free conditions across most of the tropical Atlantic. Just a few fair weather cumulus clouds. Notice the intertropical convergence zone here pretty far suppressed down to the south, as we would expect for this time of the year. So not really much occurring out there in the Atlantic. Not much occurring in the Pacific either. And remember, we're actually approaching rapidly on the start of the Eastern Pacific hurricane season, which actually starts here in about 16 days. So we are rapidly approaching the Eastern Pacific hurricane season, and then the Atlantic will follow there soon after. And we also have the potential for some significant severe weather today, mainly across portions of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Nebraska today, where there is a moderate risk in portions of southeastern Kansas and northeastern Nebraska. Taking a look at the sea surface temperature anomaly map, this is updated as of yesterday, April the 28th. We continue to notice that we have cooling ongoing across the equatorial Pacific and the Nino 3.4 region, which is this area right in through here. And this area is, again, kind of the area that we look for El Nino or La Nina conditions, and we are firmly entrenched within a La Nina condition right now, where water temperatures across the equatorial Pacific are right around about negative 0.5 to 1 degree Celsius below the long-term average, which quantifies as a La Nina. And this La Nina has been going on for the past 3 years. We've been in a La Nina the past 3 years, and that is crazy to think, considering that these things don't typically last that long. However, this is entering a third year La Nina, and this will be very crucial in the upcoming hurricane season for the Atlantic, and also reducing tropical cyclones in the Pacific. And in the Atlantic basin, we've continued to see a warming trend across most of the main development region over the last several days and weeks. And that has been a result of a negative North Atlantic oscillation pattern. If we kind of zoom in here and take a look at a different data set for the main development region, we continue to notice that the MDR is now substantially warmer than what it was even just about 4 weeks ago at this point, where near basically most of the MDR is at or slightly above the long-term average at this point. And we've continued to see a little bit of cooling in the subtropical Atlantic, and we noted this several weeks prior that this was going to be a very crucial time in seeing how the warmth balances between the subtropical and tropical Atlantic. And when we have a very warm subtropical Atlantic, which is up here compared to the tropical main development region, we tend to notice a lot of dry, stable conditions that persist across the MDR, because we have a lot of upward moving air that is concentrated where the mass of greater warmth is, which in this case is now shifting down to the main development region. And if this trend does persist, this warming trend that is, were to persist over the next several weeks, which we'll take a look at those predictions here in a minute. But if this persists, we can expect for those higher end numbers from Colorado State University and other such agencies to then verify, as the stability issues will be mostly taken care of in the tropical main development region, should be good to go by the peak season. Now, we can take a look at this in a bunch of different ways here. This is a Hofmoeller diagram. Basically, this is just looking at the zonal wind at about 850 millibars, so at 5,000 feet above the ground, above ground level. This is where we're looking at the zonal wind anomalies. So all of this blue in here is easterly wind, anomalous easterly wind, and all of the oranges and reds, this is anomalous westerly wind. And again, we can kind of see this little map up here, and this general area right here kind of correlates to the Atlantic main development region right in here. And over the last several days and weeks, we've actually been in a negative North Atlantic oscillation. And what this is, if we go to the GFS ensembles and we look just about 72 hours in the past here, this will kind of give a general idea of what the North Atlantic oscillation is. When we have a negative pattern that we've been in for the last several days, the pressure patterns between kind of the subtropical Atlantic and down here in the tropical Atlantic, just to kind of summarize it, this isn't exactly how it goes, but a general idea is that the pressure patterns would generally favor trade winds that are weaker, and one of the reasons is because we don't have a strong ridge of high pressure, and the pressure differences are anomalously lower in this region, meaning that we have anomalous westerly wind at the surface, and this would end up resulting in lower trade winds, and thus we don't have quite the fast, breezy conditions across the surface of the water that would easily churn it up and make it cooler. In fact, we have a downwelling effect where we get downwelling of warmer water that surfaces up. It's kind of like how El Nino and La Nina work, but not quite. But this is just kind of a general overview. And we can see that over the next several days, we will experience a little bit of the weakening here. So we could expect to see maybe some cooling off, or at least leveling off, of the warming trend in the Atlantic main development region. But that will very quickly peak back up once again as we approach May 3rd and beyond. The GFS forecast here is suggesting anomalous westerly wind here to persist from about May 3rd, at least through about May 7th. So several good days of warming, if not several weeks of warming. And the GFS ensembles are kind of forecasting this. Again, this is about that time we're heading into May 3rd. We kind of see that we end up getting in some of these trends from day to day, but the general overall pattern continues to suggest that we end up with weaker trade winds down here across the main development region, and overall that we end up with more anomalous warming. And we'll see how long that actually persists for. If this can persist for several weeks on end, we may be looking at a quite toasty main development region come June 1st. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the next several days and weeks ahead. Again, this will all kind of determine what might happen with the main development region in the tropical Atlantic and how that is going. If we look here at the CFS monthly forecast, again, we'll look here at the sea surface temperature anomaly. This goes into August. We can tell here that we have a pretty decent warming trend here in the main development region, but the problem again is going to be how much warmer compared to average is the North Atlantic here and the subtropics compared to the MDR. If we see anomalous warmth still persisting in the subtropics and not that much warmth in the MDR, we could still be dealing with some stability issues, so we're going to have to see how this persists into the next upcoming few months here. Now, real quickly, touching on the severe weather aspect of things, we have a moderate risk today for severe storms. Again, this moderate risk includes places like Grand Island, Seneca, Topeka, and Lincoln, Nebraska. This is for a 15% chance of tornadoes, significant tornadoes within a 25-mile given point radius. So you have a 15% chance of having a tornado within 25 miles of a given point. That doesn't really seem like a lot, but that is actually quite substantial, and that's one of our higher end risk days. And the wind here, a 45% chance of having wind damage within about 25 miles of a given point, and that is a near 50-50 odds of having wind damage in a given area. So that's a pretty high risk for wind damage, and you could see significant winds over hurricane force in some of these areas, and of course the potential for large hail, which could be over 2, 3, 4 inches in diameter, generally from northern Oklahoma all the way up into portions really of Nebraska. So a pretty big severe weather day on taps for today. If we look at the day 2 convective, A slight risk all the way from southern Wisconsin all the way down to portions of extreme northeastern Arkansas and extreme west, kind of northwestern portions of Tennessee. 5% tornado risk across Lake Michigan and northwestern Indiana. They're including some of the areas all the way up there towards Terre Haute, etc. We also have a 15 wind and 15 hail risk. Then for day 3, again, a slight risk for severe storms generally across portions of the Texas Panhandle in through portions of southern and west Texas. And then also a marginal risk across portions of West Virginia, southeastern Ohio, southwestern Pennsylvania, and eastern Kentucky. Now for the day 4 to 8 outlook, we have a slight risk for severe storms, 15% area on day 4. This will be for portions of really Oklahoma and Texas. And then day 5, we don't have a risk, but day 6, kind of, again, in the general same area. And then day 7 and day 8, we don't have any risk highlighted at this point. So a pretty active severe weather setup for the next several days here. We are expected to have a pretty active season when it comes to severe weather, it does seem. And we've been pretty above average with our tornado count so far. For the last several months. So that will be something to kind of keep an eye on. Stay safe for everybody in those affected areas today and over the next several days. All right. With that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. I'll talk to you guys again some more later.